Good morning, everybody. This is Jeff J. Brown, China Rising Radio, Sinoland in Shenzhen, just south of the Tropic of Cancer. Have a wonderful expose for you today entitled Western Big Lie Propaganda's Newest Smear Against the Chinese People, Handmaid Tale, Baby Factories. And there's a picture, and the caption reads, "Women of China, flee the country or run for the hills now to keep from being turned into Communist Party of China baby factory machines. Beijing is coming to get you, lock you up, and control your uterus." Give me a break, please. Unfortunately, Western propaganda brainwashing works around the world, and this smear campaign will too. Pictured above, a still shot from the U.S. TV series The Handmaid's Tale, based on the 1985 book written by Margaret Atwood. Let me see. Of course, there's tons of links, so go to the China Rising website or the YouTube channel or the SoundCloud channel to get the link to this article. Let me see. First, the world was brainwashed about Chinese organ harvesting gulags, then canned human meat being sold to Africans, then Muslim concentration camps, and now, ta-da, handmade tale baby factories to enslave the women into birthing against their will. It started on March 5th with a juicy smear job concocted by an American Chinese lady named Frankie Huang entitled, "Get ready for China's baby quotas. Demographic fears mean a hard future for women's rights." It's one of those lurid, scurrilous hatchet jobs that the CIA is so good at putting out and getting blasted out in its big lie propaganda machine, the BLPM. Sure enough, on March 11th, the CIA's faithful foghorn, The Guardian, cranked up the BLPM with China database lists breed-ready status of 1.8 million women. The next day, the South China Morning Post got the BLPM echo chamber going by reprinting this yellow journalism with an even more sordid headline: "Mystery Chinese database lists, quote, breed-ready status of 1.8 million women, along with phone numbers, addresses, and Facebook profiles." You got to give them credit. I mean, this piece of propaganda pornography came straight out of Langley. Internet search breed ready, and it is already cascading across the planet. After all, that is how the BLPM is meant to work. They artfully got the Handmaid's Tale trope going in high gear, and breed ready. I mean, wow, they're good, really good. Of course, The Handmaid's Tale was Margaret Atwood's 1985 blockbuster, futuristic dystopian novel about New England, America, now a totalitarian theocracy called Gilead, where fertility rates have cratered and every woman who can have babies is imprisoned at birthing centers to provide offspring to high-ranking government officials. I read it back then. It's a great novel. In 1990, Harold Pinter wrote the screenplay for an eponymous major motion picture, and in 2017, it hit U.S. television as a series. By the way, if you have not seen Pinter's Nobel Prize for Literature acceptance speech, it is one of the greatest takedowns of U.S. empire ever presented. He was dying of cancer, which makes his performance even more dramatic. But I digress. I could spend pages destroying the credibility of these two pulp fictions, but I will just make a few points to show you how bad they are. Ms. Huang says in her smear that Chinese women are treated worse than dirt because their salaries are 22% less than men's. Okay, I'm sure that's true, but that goes for any country across our pale blue dot that you want to pick out. John Lennon and Yoko Ono were right when they sang their anthem, "Woman is the nigger of the world." Frankie's little bio says she's from Beijing and New Jersey. So let's dig deeper, shall we? What Ms. Huang intentionally left out, if she even bothered to look it up, is the gender gap in her darling United States, and it ain't pretty. Here is a historical chart showing the U.S. gender gap through 2012, but since it hasn't gotten any better the previous 20 years, I'm sure it's still valid. Notice the percent for women is 76.5%. Its inverse is 23.5%, meaning they earn this percentage less than U.S. men. Let's go back to Ms. Huang's hatchet job. Chinese women make 22% less, right? Which is better than U.S. ladies. And why is Frankie living in Shanghai? I mean, look at this chart below. Asian women in the U.S. only make 15% less than the boys do. Hey, Frankie, you're Asian. Jersey is waiting for you, baby. I'm sure China will not miss you one iota. The same chart shows that U.S. women are worse off than Chinese females. U.S. white women are worse off than Chinese females at 25% less. Goddess help you if you are dark-skinned. Geez Louise, black women make 37% less, and poor Latino senoras make a super racist 46% less than the he-men. When I tell Chinese women what their U.S. counterparts face, they are mortified, and justifiably so. No paid maternity, breastfeeding, paternity leave, no universal health care, and doctors prefer to do C-sections to avoid malpractice lawsuits. The usual cruel, corrupt, and criminal U.S. private insurance with sky-high deductibles, or if the least little thing goes wrong, many families face bankruptcy for the hospital bill. U.S. maternity mortality rate is climbing, and at 26.4 per 100,000 is the highest in the West. In China, it is 19.6 and dropping. China's infant mortality rate keeps dropping, now approaching 7.5% per 7.5 per thousand, versus the U.S.'s 5.9. Like the gender gap, heaven help you if your U.S. infant is native or black, as their death rates are twice as high as whites and Asians. Frankie, of course, butchers Chinese reality elsewhere too. Before the one-child policy was recently abolished, I know tons of locals who had more than one child. China's 55 minorities, and after the first few years that the law was passed, rural farming families as well, all happily breed like rabbits. If you spaced out your second birth, the modest fines were waived. Back in your Anglo land, most Chinese did not have more than two because of cost, but if you had a third or more, you were likely affluent, paid the fine, and lost health care subsidies. I know for a fact the fines were income-based too. The richer you were, the more you paid, which is only fair. The only citizens who really had a tough time were Communist Party of China members, CPC members, who were and are expected to live by the letter of the law. I talk with CPC women, so I know. I traveled through China's hinterland in some of the poorest areas of the country, Ningxia, Gansu, Tibetan Sichuan, Yunnan, and Guizhou, to write the first book of the China trilogy, 44 days, see below, commented how surprised I was to see so many young children everywhere I went. Even the Western smear that soulless, godless Chinese mothers were killing 1 million girls every year because they preferred boys turned out to be just that, racist, anti-communist Chinese propaganda. How do I know? Demographers Yao Jiangshi and John James Kennedy did their homework and discovered that China had 25 to 30,000 million more girls than previously thought. In their article entitled Delayed Registration and Identifying the, quote, Missing Girls in China from the China Quarterly. Of course, no self-loathing mainstream media hack on the China beat can write a horrid chop job without desecrating Mao Zedong's world-changing achievements, so naturally little Frankie put the pedal to the commie-hating metal. As I have written, Mr. Mao was and still is human history's greatest liberator of women, bar none. Second article is even better or worse, depending on your point of view. Supposed, quote, Dutch internet expert, end of quote, Victor Jeevers, claimed that he, quote, discovered a Chinese database with 1.8 million files on women who are, quote, read ready. Now here's the kicker. He's the same guy who, quote, discovered another supposed database, quote, tracking 2.5 million Muslims in Xinjiang, end of quote. How convenient. The same guy is implicated in two propaganda smears. In other words, Mr. Jeevers, if he even exists, is CIA all the way. Like I wrote in the second book of the China trilogy, China Rising, see below, how the same crisis actors show up to be, quote, interviewed, end of quote, after all the West's endless false flags. Westerners are brainwashed that they have a, quote, free press, end of quote, when in fact they live in a matrix world of simulacrum, like the allegorical movie The Truman Show. The hero, played by Jim Carrey, eventually breaks out of his fake world. Anglo-landers are still living behind the Great Western Firewall. The West BLPM does not report the truth. It's not journalism. It simply peddles fiction to destroy global capitalism's enemies, domestic and abroad. 1.4 billion Chinese are communist socialist, so they all walk around with a big imperial bullseye on their backs. Unfortunately, this latest BLPM attack will work. It always does, because Western mainstream media takes their marching orders from their governments and spy agencies who are fully embedded within. It is well orchestrated, just like a symphony. What will not be reported is that many public surveys in China were discussed at its just concluded National Two Sessions Congress. The results are in. Chinese families are saying that the biggest impediment to having more children is the lack of affordable daycare for all the working mothers and fathers across the country. In the most responsive and participatory democracy on earth, I can promise you this shortage will get solved by Baba Beijing fast. To learn more about Chinese democracy, just go to my blog page. On the right, search for the word participatory. I have written several articles on the subject. To close out, let's listen to John's and Yoko's haunting lament, "Woman is the nigger of the world." And there is an embedded link to YouTube. And there is a photo that says, pictured above, the sign I posted in the window of our local school, Professor Brown, to let the neighbors know that not all Westerners are brainwashed fools. English translation is, Chairman Mao said, quote, "Women hold up half the sky," end of quote. March 8th is International Women's Day. Professor Brown honors all the contributions women made for liberated China. This is Jeff J. Brown, China Rising, Radio Sinoland, signing out from Shenzhen. Have a wonderful week.